Danger, Will Robinson, danger. Markets were pretty much flat last week, except for the Russell. What's up, everybody? Welcome aboard to Bubba's Bottom Line, and another week down the road, and you see my special glasses from a party last night, and just wanted to share with you the flashing lights, because we are flashing red, and a lot of things going on here. The general markets were pretty much flat, actually, as you go back and look at it. The Dow and S&P were slightly lower. The NASDAQ did rally, and of course the Russell continues to make new highs. Certainly not a surprise when you look at the overall trade war talks, you look at the potential tariffs, and you see what's going on. The Russell is the least affected by the overall global economy and what's going on, because the Russell is U.S. companies as a rule, and they do very little business overseas, and so that's why it's no surprise. So the money is flowing out from the other indices, flowing into the Russell. But I think that when you look at it, that is, we would call that a little bit of danger. The overall explosion here is going to be some sort of a concern. Again, we're getting well ahead of ourselves once again. Now we are still staying in our neutral posture, more or less observing as the Dow and the S&P break out of these consolidation levels again. But they are getting a touch overbought. I mean, when you look across the board and you look at some of these stocks, like for example, Lululemon, that was just, a couple of years ago, a disaster that spikes 11% on earnings, but that were good earnings, don't get me wrong. But you're starting to see these leaps and bounds types of moves, and a lot of these companies that just don't make a lot of sense from a logic standpoint. I mean, Lululemon, as good as they can be, have no business being up 35% in 4 weeks. But they are, and we're not going to fight that, but we're pointing out some of the things that you should be worried about. The volatility, the VIX continues to collapse. What does that mean? Again, this does not change what we think from a big standpoint, which is we're neutral, but it is something that should be known and be taken warning with, that we're getting once again a little bit ahead of ourselves. We just had the jobs number on Friday, and once again we had 223,000 jobs. And again, I'm not saying that's bad, but once again, wage growth 8 cents an hour. So once again, we're now up to a half of a baseball ticket annually over the last 3 months in wage increases. Of course, if we tie in the ridiculous prices of oil, okay, which did collapse this week, and we'll talk about that in a bit, but if you hand in the ridiculous prices in oil and the lack of them coming down with the big selling off in crude, I have to ask you and make a very simple statement, that the 8 cents an hour is being well eaten up by the overprice of the gas. And that's not going to talk about some of the other commodities that are exploding, like cotton. Now you can bet your, that blue jeans and anything that's cotton is going to go soaring to the roof, because these companies understand how to take advantage of the consumer. And what do I mean by that? Very simple, okay? They're going to raise prices. Now, let's look from a reality standpoint. In the pair of, for example, blue jeans, it's probably less than 1% of the entire cost of production of the actual raw material of cotton. But they're going to make this big story, and they're going to get prices to raise, just like Starbucks always does. Did you ever notice Starbucks somehow got their like, for example, their Frappuccinos up to $6, yet coffee has come way down? This is, again, standard. The only industry that really tries to follow what's going on with prices is oil, and that's only because it's an everyday occurrence, that it's something that we have to use. So they do go up and down, but if for example, oil goes to 70, which it did, and gas goes from, let's say, 250 to 3, And if, let's say, oil goes back to 55, then and oil, gasoline will not go back down lower than it was before. This is kind of the natural way, which is why I always urge you to take a look at the profits. Okay, so when they report quarterly profits, and you'll see these record profits again. Why? Because this is exactly what they're doing, and they never come down as fast as they go up. It's when you're equity markets, they go down faster than they go up when they start to go down. Goods and services that we have to pay for, they go down slower and typically never catch up. And again, that's just something that, you know, we watch and we notice and we know that what goes on. But here we have markets that popped. Okay, we had gold, which was very much flat, hovering around the bottom end. We believe that gold is a play, and I got a lot of emails last week for the stuff I wrote for Kitco criticizing that, well, gold doesn't work on technical analysis. And what I say to that is BS. Everything works on technical analysis. It doesn't matter. Again, the minute you try to tie in outside news and what's going on, that's the minute you lose. Okay, that's the minute you have no chance. Everything trades from a technical standpoint. Now, whether or not it can continue because of the technicals, that we don't know. But we always know that the moves always start on a technical basis. So I appreciate all the emails and I thank you, but you're wrong. Okay, technical analysis, technical movement in markets is always something that's going to have some sort of an effect. The cryptocurrencies had a relatively flat, quiet week as they turned around. But I think one of the interesting things that we saw last week is all of a sudden there's a lot more acceptance in the cryptocurrency world. As I've been saying for, I don't know, months now, and again, you have to remember, I was a non-believer. All right, I was a basher like everybody else. But what you've seen and the developments you're starting to see is telling you that it's real, it's spectacular, and it's going to be here. And the first thing you want to look at is some of the exchanges, but to bring to mind BitterX, which is one of the cryptocurrency wallets, you can now put in US dollars to convert to cryptocurrencies. So that side of the business is being more competitive. There's a new exchange that just opened for traders in London. One of the biggest currency exchanges, LMX, now is letting you trade cryptocurrencies. So again, the more acceptance, the more trade, the more it allows investors to get in. And as they get easier to invest into, all that shows you is that now it opens it up to more people. You know, I actually sat and played cards on Friday night with somebody, and we're talking about the cryptos, and he said to me his exact words, it was so hard I couldn't figure out how to get in. So I said, if I can't get in, how am I going to get out? That is now becoming easier. I think it's something that you have to keep in mind now as we move forward and understand that now that there's going to be some derivatives, you've got a lot of small nations now accepting it. So again, we say it's real and it's spectacular. Now, we had also last week, we had a GDP report, and the GDP was crap. And of course, once again, we get the excuses of, well, it was the weather, it was this, I didn't feel good, I got a headache, I don't know. Look, we're not getting the growth. I don't care what the Atlanta Fed says. I don't care what GDP Now says. I don't care what anybody says. It's obvious we are not getting the growth that they're looking for. Now, there's a number of reasons for that, but the biggest reason is we don't produce enough to get the growth that we're looking for. Okay, we haven't gotten to that point. All you have to do is look at the jobs. Now, again, is there a chance you can get a 4% print on GDP? Absolutely. Why? Well, you could get a big shipment of soybeans again, which got us the first 3% in soybean in GDP. But we are not going to get the growth that we are looking for because of the configuration of what is going on in this country right now. Now, that doesn't make it bad, but we're not creating things. We're creating service jobs. You continue to hear how many jobs are available. And there are. There's millions of jobs available at great paying wages. But the problem is there's nobody to fill them because the jobs are too far advanced for most of us because we don't all have that technical savvy to learn and go to get that job at, at a Google or a Facebook or one of those companies. So that's why we're going to have this problem. And this is going to have to work its way through the system. So you will continue to hear there's so many jobs available and our unemployment is low, but our unemployment is low because we're seeing the production in the service industry. A lot more people working in service industries that do not create a lot of things. So again, our GDP is not going to be great, in my opinion. We're going to continue to see the debt to GDP grow, which is not a good sign. You know, we're destroying our economy. We're just destroying our financials. Now again, we're not the only ones, so it doesn't show up because we aren't the only ones. This is that Federal Reserve scam that we've seen, which if you ever read the book, The Creature from Jekyll Island, this is the scam that was written about, that they continue to create money so that it doesn't feel like there's a problem. But of course, as we talk about, we hear about no inflation, yet we're paying more for goods and services on a daily basis. So those are extremely tough problems to deal with. And I think that, again, these will be the things that start the next wave. These will be the things that create the next problem. And again, I don't want to predict and tell you that the world is coming in, because it's not. But what it is telling you is that some of the investments that we make in some of the other markets are going to be a little bit of a challenge. And I think when you see, for example, we talked about oil. Oil was going up, and I was getting slammed on the head by everybody telling me that how nuts I was, that oil was going to continue to go higher. And again, I'm not saying it won't go higher, but what I am saying is that isn't it amazing that we talked about last week, the great train robbery? Isn't it amazing that oil suddenly started to go down on the Friday of Memorial Day weekend, when it was too late and when no price was going to drop at the pump? Okay, isn't that just an amazing situation that now the holiday is over and oil is coming down? And I think it's coming down a lot more. I think that, again, if you've ever seen one of those graphs or those charts that show a market bubble, okay, and you get up to the new paradigm, and all of a sudden we come down and we get a little bit of a rally, that's what I would expect to see, and then I think oil gets slammed. Again, we're very comfortable once again after sweating it out, being short oil. We are now very comfortable again being short oil, and we look for not just lower prices, but dramatically lower prices coming down the pipe. And we'll talk about this and more when we come back from the break. This is Bubba's Bottom Line. I am Todd Bubba Horowitz, and I want to remind you about our high school investing program. It's highschoolinvesting.com. Check out the curriculum. We are going to have to shut it down if we don't get some help. I mean, it's simple. It's just a simple dollars and cents. I can't afford to pay for it anymore. I'm not going to continue to support this. I've got 580 high schools that we're involved with. We give the program away for free. We have not been able to get sponsorship, so I'm coming to you through Patreon if you'd like to help. And again, no obligation, but if you'd like to help, go to patreon.com/Bubba Trading. That's Patreon, patreon.com/Bubba Trading. And you can help us out. And in the meantime, also don't forget to catch the Bubba Show every single day at libertytalk.fm, 4 to 5 Eastern Time. That's libertytalk.fm. We'll be right back with the show momentarily. Welcome back to Bubba's Bottom Line. Todd Bubba Horowitz with you, and I hope everybody's having a great weekend. The weather's finally starting to break, and I'm out having a good time. And in the meantime, as we look around and we look at the commodity space, we had the big trade war talks this week. Now, again, you had Monday markets were closed, Tuesday markets were down 300 or whatever it was, 400, then they were up 300, and they were down. Getting seasick, but really nothing happened. Okay, that's really what the story is. And we continue to hear about this trade talk and whatever. But again, the simplest thing to look at is you look at the price action of anything that might be affected by the trade wars. Okay, so grains are number one. Okay, grains, steel, aluminum, they did not get hammered. They did not get hurt. Okay, so you know that the people that need to know, if they're going to panic, that would be it. And they didn't budge. Yes, grains were a little bit lower, but we wrote last week that grain should be down this week anyways because they were extremely overbought. All you have to do is look at the percentage of how much they're up compared to where they were when this initially started. And they're up dramatically from when the trade talks, the trade wars, that stuff happened. So that's the only thing you need to know. Watch the price action. That's what's important. And because it doesn't matter what you and I think. It doesn't matter what the news. It all matters in what buyers and sellers are doing, what the price action takes you. Now, we continue to see consumer confidence numbers go through the roof. Okay, now the first is the consumer confidence numbers are not a general poll. It's a very select group. This is kind of like the USDA, you know, government numbers in general are BS. Okay, why? Well, the first thing is they're supposed to show you if the government knows how to count, which we know they don't. Right? But they adjust them and they change them all the time. Okay, I'm trying to think of the word, but right now it's escaping me. But they go back and they repost the numbers. All right, so they just because you got a number today doesn't mean that it won't change when they come out with the next report. So I think that's a concern that we need to look at. And we know that last week Starbucks had their training day. Okay, America's Toilets had the training day for sensitivity, and again, I have no problem with that. I'm always upset when there is things that don't make sense. I always wonder as to why we can't just all get along, and why we just can't get things to be proper and have your people trained right from the beginning. I think that's one of the questions I wonder is why weren't these employees trained right from the beginning? And that is something, you know, look, depending on where you go, I mean, if you're in a New York Starbucks, there's a lot of homeless that go through there that come in and beg, which is understandable. Use the bathroom, you know, America's bathroom. But again, that's the area that they're in, and you know, we're all human beings. They all need to be treated with some, as long as they're not causing any problems, they all need to be treated with respect. So again, it's nice that Starbucks had to go through the training, but I wonder why we had to wait until an event or until an incident before they had to do their training. I think, you know, when you look at what's going on, again, Starbucks is busy. They just continue to grow. I think they're outgrowing themselves, but at the end of the day, it is what it is. And, you know, I'm not a big fan of Howard Schultz, but he is a very smart guy. So I think this new privacy policy has gone, once again, way too far. Right? As always, we tend to go way too far from one way to the other. I mean, now to get any information, you know, and privacy, you've got to give out your firstborn to get there. And that's if you're the sender of information. And I mean, I find it interesting, you know, you can opt in to whatever you want. I don't know. I'm not giving away my private information. I don't really care. All right. So I think that, you know, these things that are going on are really just a bunch of horse, whatever you can say it. But we're seeing, as we saw with Lululemon, we're seeing some growth in retail in some, but we're seeing the others going out of business. Now, as we've all heard and seen, you know, obviously Amazon is taking over the world. I don't have a problem with the free market, but that's, to me, would be a real big deal to the brick and mortar retailers. Deutsche Bank, problems again. Now, we continue to ignore these problems as we always do. We continue to not worry about the problem at Deutsche Bank, but right now they've got they don't have enough in reserve, okay, which I continue to stand by my statement that not only do they not have enough in reserve, but the others, our banks here, many do not have enough in reserve. And I think this, again, will be the same problem that will create the next meltdown. I understand what's going on, and I think that this is, again, the debt problem that we will face because banks have once again lost their minds. They're out of control. And of course, the little community banks, once again, we found a way to stick it to them and screw them. And nothing pisses me off more than that is they changed some of the banking regulations again last week about trading and some other things, which only really benefits JP Morgan, Citigroup, Morgan Stanley, JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs. I want to know when we're going to allow the small competitors to create competition against some of the big banks. Now, we all know from the Midwest, and a lot of us are in the farming communities, that we need the community banks to be able to help us, again, to get through the season, to borrow money, to process our crops, the whole deal. And we're continually to pressure and put them out of business. So under the guise of, well, this is for everybody, the new changes are really just for the big banks, once again. So once again, the small community banks get it stuck up there, and it's really frustrating because of the value of the small community bank. You know, you go into a JP Morgan Chase, and I bank at Chase, but you go into a JP Morgan Chase, you might see new people, they might rotate new people every month, right? It's nice to be able to go into the community bank, shake the hand of your banker, and know that he or she understands what you're trying to do and what you're looking for. Isn't that make more sense? But instead, we torture the small banks. We make the practice unfair because the difference is that they all have the same type of compliance issues. But of course, JP Morgan pays about 1% compared to the small community bank pays 10%. So it's an unfair problem that will continue as long as we allow these people, these agencies, to tell us how to run the country. All right? And this is why, again, you're going to see the same type of meltdown. Because why? Well, the banks know that the Fed is standing by with the printing presses ready to go. And of course, the little banks don't get that same edge. And I think, that, again, that becomes a problem. And it's just starting again with Deutsche Bank. You know, this happened 4 or 5 years ago. Markets had a little meltdown. They were able to come back. But all I'm saying to you is very simply, okay? If you understand the fractional banking, you understand what they're doing, right? When you owe the bank money, okay, they don't want to foreclose. They do not want to get your money back. They just want to figure out how to get you to pay. So if you're making a payment of $100 a month, they'll try to get you to $80, to $60, to $50, just so you keep paying because of the way they account for it and because it doesn't matter at the end of the day. And I think, again, this will be the ruin, again, of the next meltdown. Now, the dollar went to 95 as we expected. It is sold off. They talk like it's sold off. Furthermore, do these pundits have a clue? Okay, this is something that I find to be extremely frustrating. If you'd have watched any of the news last week, you would have heard the stories like they were fretting, the sweat dripping off their brow. Oh my God, the markets are down because of the trade wars. What are we going to do? They were down less than 1% on any given day. And here they are, the sweat pouring out, the breaking out from the stress. Are you kidding me? This is a point where it's beyond the ridiculous, okay? The markets barely moved last week when you look at it. Less than 1% on a daily basis, back and forth. And yet here I hear, and the trade wars, oh my God, there are going to be problems. The tariffs, Macron is talking, and Trudeau is going crazy, and all the world is nuts. Well, you know who's nuts? The pundits that report this crap, because many people get their news on a short burst, and they get that in their mind, and then they start to panic. You want to know why markets sometimes panic out of nowhere? Because we do not get proper reporting from those that are giving us the information. and because as people that are rushing in a hurry, we don't always get the whole story. But we know the sensationalism that is always built into these stories, and that is the bigger problem, and that should be corrected. But who am I? I'm just a guy that hangs out and does a little bit of TV work. In the meantime, this is Bubba's Bottom Line, Todd Bubba Horowitz. I know I snuck in some commentary, but I'll be back with more and my commentary after the break. Bubba's Bottom Line, Todd Bubba Horowitz. Okay, kids, highschoolinvesting.com. We're trying to continue. We're going into our 8th year. We need some help. If you have any desire to help us to keep this program going, because if we don't get help, we're shutting it down this year. Because again, I just got the next bill for next year, and it's not enough. And because I don't get sponsorship, I always thought that we could get some bank sponsorship, but haven't been able to do that yet. But if you'd like to help our high school investing program, go to Patreon, patreon.com/Bubba Trading. Help us out if you'd like. And you know, if you like the content, you like what we do, obviously we'd love to have some help from you. In the meantime, don't forget to catch the Bubba Show every single day at libertytalk.fm, 4 to 5 Eastern Time. That's libertytalk.fm, 4 to 5 Eastern Time, Monday through Friday, the Bubba Show. Let's get back to Bubba's Bottom Line and my commentary. Welcome back to Bubba's Bottom Line, Todd Bubba Horowitz, and this is my take, my commentary. And obviously, I've always got enough to bitch about in general. I can find things that, as you know, I snuck a few in through, but this is something that I find a tragedy. This is something that I find that angers me, and this just shows you how far we have separated in this country, and that's sad more than anything else. So we all have heard the story by now about Roseanne and her getting the show canceled because of their comments, and rightfully so. I do not defend what she said. I do not defend what she wrote. I do not defend any of the racist comments if you interpreted them as such. Okay? Do not defend them, and she deserved to be fired. No problem. I feel bad for all of the people on the show that lost their jobs. You know, not everybody makes $1 million an episode. Okay? So I feel bad for the people that worked for her, but I don't feel bad, and she deserved to be disciplined, and firing is one of the best sources of discipline. But of course, if we take it a little bit deeper and look, that obviously Roseanne's a little bit to the right, ABC is to the left. Does anybody remember Jamal Hill calling the president a white supremacist? I mean, just bashing him and then doubling up on it. Oh, she's still doing her radio show or her TV show at ESPN. Samantha Bee from TBS called Ivanka Trump the C word. All right. Now, I don't care what side of the aisle you are. That is, for a woman, in my understanding, that is the worst thing you can ever say or call a woman. And yet, not only did she not get any discipline, not only did we take her false apology, but she won some kind of an award. Okay. Now, again, we've seen all of these people over the time that have bashed and ridiculed and beaten down on our president, and yet Roseanne Barr gets fired for one potentially racist comment. Okay. And yet Samantha Bee calls Ivanka Trump the C word. Keith Olbermann, who's now back with ESPN, again, the left ESPN, and they wonder why their ratings are falling. They wonder why they're having trouble in business. Okay, who has called the president a Nazi, who I used to like until he became an imbecile, okay, and decided that, you know, again, I'm a full believer in this country that everybody should be entitled to their opinion, and I have no problem. I don't care if you're left or right. If you've been with me long enough, you know that my words to you are, I don't care which side you are, just get out there and vote and support your side. But this has become ridiculous and such double standard, where people get fired on the one side of the aisle, and the other side of the aisle is free to go. As we remember the Kathy Lee Harris with the hanging of Donald Trump's head, and the daily bashing that the president gets on The View. So if you think that that is acceptable, well, I guess it's okay. Again, that's the beauty of America. You get to think that if you'd like to. But I find it distressing that ABC uses the double standard like anybody else. I think that causes problems for Disney. I think it's for ESPN, but that's, I think, why ESPN is in the toilet, because of people like Jamal Hill who mouth off and don't understand the true benefit of the United States of America, because we're trying to make everything better for everybody. This is Bubba's Bottom Line. Todd Bubba Horowitz. As always, I thank you for being here. Catch the Bubba Show every day, 4 to 5 Eastern, LibertyTalk.fm. Have a great weekend. Thank you so much. We'll see you next week, everybody.